Welcome back to Around the House. I'm your host, Don Magruder, and you're listening to my 790 AM WLBE in beautiful Leesburg, Florida. We're also being seen today on Lake Sumter Television. That's LSTV, courtesy of Red Apples Media on Bright House 498, Comcast 13, Florida Cable 4, and CenturyLink number 83. We're staying in the yard again, and we have a great guest. We have Chuck Hackenberger. He's the owner of TURFMASTers Pest Control right here in Leesburg. He's going to give us some great tips for making the lawn look great this spring. So, Chuck Hackenberger, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, and thanks for having us here.
You know, I get more compliments on your work than any person I know of. I can't tell you, you've been on our show multiple times, and I will have people come up to me and say, Chuck Hackenberger actually does a fantastic job on keeping their lawns and the weeds and stuff. So I just want to let you know on the air how good a job that you do, because you do have a great reputation.
Well, we try to look at each lawn as our own lawn, not just as a somebody else's lawn. It's got to look good.
Chuck, take a few minutes and tell our listeners and viewers about TURFMASTers Pest Control and the type of work that you guys are doing.
We've been around since 1986. We specialize in lawn fertilization, insecticide, weed control, fungicides, both on the lawn and the landscape, and that's all we specialize in.
If someone heard something today, because we're going to talk about a lot of different things, and I'm sure in the course they're going to say, what did he say? What's a good number they can contact you, our website?
Phone number is 352-406-2210.
What's that number again?
352-406-2210.
A lot of pest control companies have contracts, and you don't.
No, sir, we do not have contracts.
Why are contracts, in your view, a bad thing?
Well, I mean, a lot of your big national companies, they want you to sign a one-year contract, and if someone's dissatisfied, if they're having a problem with the yard, sometimes it's not easy to get out of those contracts. In Florida, by law, if you're not satisfied with a service, you're supposed to be able to cancel a contract. Some of the big companies make it difficult to do that. We don't have contracts. We just bill every other month at a time.
Every spring seems to bring different problems. Every winter, different problems. We have wet winters. We have dry winters. We have okay winters. As you look right now into spring, what are you seeing some of the big lawn problems as far as grass is concerned here in Lake and Sumter County?
Two things. One, we just haven't had any rain. The lawns are very dry. Most customers are still trying to water as much as they can, even though they're only supposed to water once a week. One of the other things that we're seeing a lot of is brown patch fungus in the grass, and it seems to be a little bit worse this year because a lot of the lawns are under stress because of the lack of rain.
What is, I've heard for years, brown patch fungus. What is a brown patch fungus?
Brown patch fungus is a cool season fungus. Usually we see it in November, December. It literally will come on overnight, and it's a fungus that's in the soil. When it shows up on your yard, it's bright yellow all the way around the outside ring of it. It's something that usually won't kill your grass, but to keep it from spreading, that's when we put a fungicide on it.
Am I right or wrong? For some reason, I'm trying to remember that once you get it, you can't get rid of it.
Right.
Is that true?
It's almost impossible to get rid of it. It just comes back every year. You spray it with a fungicide. It puts it into remission. 99% of the time, it will come back in the same spot next year.
And will the grass, once you spray it, will the grass turn green again?
If it's a warm winter, it'll green up faster. If we have a couple of cold snaps, it will stay brown, usually until the end of February, beginning of March, and then it just greens right back up.
Chuck, as you see the weather warm up here, what do you anticipate some other issues that may come up as the spring warms up?
Usually one of the bigger things is lots of different weeds are going to start popping up as it warms back up. That's usually one of the biggest things that we have a problem with. We put out a lot of herbicides to try to control them early on with a pre-emergent.
Now, can you treat weeds aggressively in the winter, or is that something that's not a good time of year to treat weeds?
No, we can be a little bit more aggressive because it's cooler temperatures. A lot of your herbicides out there have a temperature-sensitive rating on them where if it gets over a certain temperature, you really don't want to use them in fear of burning the grass.
And I guess since you do lawns all the time, so everyone knows, what are the most popular grasses used here in Lake and Sumter County?
St. Augustine and zoysia are the two most popular.
But then you also have Bahia and Bermuda, don't you?
You do have Bahia and Bermuda. Most of these communities will not let you use Bahia in the community. Usually it's just St. Augustine and zoysia.
Okay. And as you think about these type of grasses, how do you fall out between zoysia and St. Augustine? St. Augustine.
I prefer St. Augustine. Zoysia is a really nice grass. It requires just as much water as St. Augustine. When they first brought it in here, there were really no pests that bother it. Now there's a couple of insects that are becoming more and more aggressive on eating the zoysia grass, mainly in the villages as we're seeing a lot of it.
This segment of Around the House is sponsored by the New Home and Remodeling Expo, which is going to be held Saturday, March the 4th at the National Guard Armory at 400 West Meadow Street in historic downtown Leesburg from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. The expo is absolutely free to attend, and there will be over 50 booths of contractors, builders, manufacturers, and suppliers in the construction industry who can help you with your next project. There will be door prizes, cash giveaways, and at 3 p.m., someone will win $1,000 cash for just showing up. In addition, there will be the Great American Heroes Walk benefiting the veterans housing for Habitat for Humanity. It'll be a great day for everyone, and once again, it's absolutely free. So would you join me and Chuck on Saturday, March the 4th at the New Home and Remodeling Expo at the Leesburg National Guard Armory? Plus, our good friend Chuck Hackenberger, at noon, you're going to be hosting a seminar on how to make your lawn beautiful. And to answer your questions directly, Chuck, what do you plan on discussing at the seminar?
We're just going to discuss a lot of things of what to do and what not to do to your lawn, certain products, high nitrogen products, low nitrogen products. Certain times of the year you should use, different types of fertilizer. We use probably 4 different fertilizers throughout the year. It's very important, what you're putting down depending on what time of year it is.
And Chuck, when you look on the back of a fertilizer bag, a weed and feed bag, or pesticide bag, and it says using this zone. In other words, it tells you what time of year to use it in the zone in these areas. That's really not a product designed just for here, is it?
No, not at all. A lot of these products are designed for, it could be the whole southeast part of the United States. And
that's where people get in trouble, honestly.
Definitely.
When someone's choosing a grass for their home, what in your view are some things they should consider?
What type of grass it is, if it's in full sun, shade, partial, what time of the year it is, how much they're watering, how much they're not watering. There's a lot of things to consider before you put out fertilizer.
Isn't one of the biggest considerations I've asked is, how much are you willing to invest in time and money in your grass?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that, some of them water, twice a week for 20 minutes. Some water 40 minutes. Just depends on how much money they want to spend.
You're listening to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber. Our special guest today is Chuck Hackenberger. He's the owner of TURFMASTers Pest Control, and we're talking about lawns now. We've gotten out of the garden, and we're talking about lawns. And Chuck, I want to sort of talk about weed control. First off, why does anyone, and I'm going to ask a question because someone's going to ask this question, why does anyone need to hire a professional pest control person for their lawn like Chuck Hackenberger when they can go to the big box store and for less than $20 buy a bag of weed and feed or weed killer and get the same results? Well, I mean, is it just a labor thing?
No, not at all. Anything you buy over the counter anymore, if you buy a bag of weed and feed or a fertilizer with insecticide on it, the fertilizer part is fine. What gets a lot of people to spend a lot of money and they don't get any results is the weed killer. Usually it's a 2,4-D product or an atrazine product, and it's usually less than 1%. It's very, very weak. You could put it out 10 times the amount and probably wouldn't get much of a result in killing weeds. Same with insecticides. If you look at the package, it's 1% or less anymore, anything sold over the counter.
So you're talking about out of a 40-pound bag of weed and feed, you may have 10, 12 ounces of actual product?
Usually, if that. You'll look at some bags and it'll be a 1/4%.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the fertilizers. Do you have the same thing with that?
Well, fertilizers, I mean, it just depends on what time of the year it is, what kind of weather conditions it is. You can have high nitrogen, you can have low nitrogen, high potash, low potash. It just depends on the time of the year.
Let's talk a little bit about weeds. Thinking about here in Lake and Sumter County, what are our main weed criminals, I guess you could say? In other words, which weeds do you see the most of, and which are the meanest weeds, since we're staying along those lines?
Usually some of the worst ones are your dollarweed, clover, dandelions right now are really out of control. You have a lot of, even though we don't consider them weeds, you have your crabgrass, your sedge grasses. They are true grasses. Weed killers will not kill them. But we have special chemicals designed for those individual things. But weeds, usually your clover and dollarweed right now are probably the worst.
Do you have to sometimes just spot kill them with stuff like Roundup?
A lot of times, like with crabgrass, that's really the only product out there for crabgrass, goosegrass. The weed killers won't touch it, and Roundup is really the only thing that will kill it. And sometimes you have to spray them twice.
And one issue I have a problem with is sedge grass.
Yes.
Tell me, describe sedge grass and what makes it so tough to kill, because that grass, it comes up green and, oh man, it just won't die.
Sedge grass, there's 13 different kinds of sedge grass in Florida, but sedge grass is a very waxy leaf type grass. Therefore, it's hard to get the chemical to stick to it. And it's a very, very thin, skinny blade. Therefore, you don't have a whole lot of surface to get that chemical to stick on it. They make special chemicals just for sedge, but the best time to treat for sedge is when the grass is at its highest height. That way you got a lot more leaf blade to hit there.
And when it produces those cuckerburls,
those are all seeds. And
those are all seeds.
When the mower hits them, it throws seeds all over your yard, and you have a whole new generation.
Isn't that really the reason why a lot of these weeds spread? For example, you'll have a lawn service. They'll do someone's lawn, and they'll pick up seeds from weeds.
They can, yes.
And,
I mean, it's...
And then they won't wash their mower off.
Yeah, it's impossible to keep all seeds off of a lawnmower. It's just another act of Mother Nature that is hard to control.
I've been told before that one of the issues with weeds around here, sometimes people overwater. What weeds are more prevalent if you're overwatering?
Well, your clover and dollarweed, if you see that in your yard, usually that's a sign that it's getting plenty of water. If we get rain, there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay. Thinking about the Zorja and the St. Augustine, what in your view is the best chemical for weed control?
Well, we use a product. It's an MSM. It's a very good chemical. It's a systemic. Atrazine is a very good one. 2,4-D can be used in Zoysia. There's a lot of different chemicals out there that are commercial chemicals.
But I do know from talking to you earlier, 2,4-D can't be used in St. Augustine.
Correct.
It'll
Correct.
kill it. So you really have to know what type of grass you have before you just start spraying chemicals.
Oh yeah, definitely. You don't want to mix chemicals and spray them in the wrong spot. That's usually not a good thing.
And what's better, the granules or the spray?
We use the spray because of two reasons: because of the insecticide and the weed control. With granular anymore, it is almost impossible to get good control of any of those. It's just the granulars are not potent enough.
Okay.
In granulars versus a liquid.
Typically, how often should someone's yard be treated?
6 times a year, every other month. If it's applied properly, that's all that it needs to be done is 6 times a year.
As you're thinking about homeowners and weed control, where do you see that most people are making their biggest mistake?
Well, usually they grab a weed killer off the shelf at Home Depot or Lowe's, which is a type of, it's usually got glyphosate in it, which is the same as Roundup, but they don't realize that because it's not labeled Roundup. But when they start to spray it and they have lots of dead spots all over their yard, and then realize that product did have some Roundup in it.
So essentially the weed killer that a lot of these big box stores are using for grass, it's just a weakened Roundup? Is that a
Basically, yes. Yep.
And of course, if most people are like me, if the bottle says use 1 capful, we're going to know it takes 2 capfuls
That's
to
right.
do better.
Yep. 2 capfuls are always better.
Maybe 3 if it's, and if we see a lot of weeds, it might go to 4.
That's right. Yep. I see that a lot.
So you see that a lot. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people like me out there. I won't talk about pests right now.
Mm-hmm.
Weeds are one thing, and I guess I'm like a lot of people. I have had the fight for the yard. There's a lot of pests out there, aren't there?
There's a lot of them, yeah.
And what are the biggest pests that you see affecting lawns around here?
Well, on St. Augustine grass, your big issue is chinch bugs. On the zoysia grass is bill bugs, and mole crickets now are becoming a big issue, mainly in the villages because there is so much zoysia grass up there now.
All right, let's talk about each one. What does a chinch bug look like?
It's a little tiny black insect the size of a pinhead. The adults are black, and their wings will form a white X in the middle of it. The baby chinch bugs are usually orange and have a white stripe, and they're very, very hard to see.
Okay, well, that's about saying someone like me who's got a little gray hair and they're not seeing as well, you can't see these things, can you?
Usually not, unless you really know what you're looking for. A lot of companies will come out and tell you that you have chinch bugs and show you a bug that's not a chinch bug, but, if you don't know what they are, you can be fooled very easily.
Now, what does the chinch bug actually do to the grass?
It basically sucks all the juices out of the grass and kills it.
At the root?
In the root, the stem, basically.
So this little microscopic bug's down there, and he's sucking the juice out of the grass and killing it.
Yep.
All right, now, bill bug, what is that?
Bill bugs and mole crickets are basically going to do the same thing. I mean, they're going to come in to zoysia grass or Bermuda grass, and they will eat the bottom of the roots off of the grass. So they're a little bit different in a way that they kill the grass.
You're listening to Around the House, and we're having a great discussion with Chuck Hackenberger. He's the owner of TURFMASTers Pest Control right here in Leesburg. And Chuck will be putting a seminar on noon at noontime at the New Home and Remodeling Expo, which is Saturday, March the 4th. It's a free expo, and the expo is free. And he's going to talk to you about how to make your yard beautiful. Free expert advice from Chuck Hackenberger. Chuck, there's another pest I've seen. There's 2 more. I'll be driving my lawnmower, and I'll hit grass, and next thing I do is see little white moss. What is that?
That is sod webworm moss.
Now, what do those things do?
The sod webworms will come in, the moths will come in, lay the eggs will hatch, and all the caterpillars will start to eat the top part of your leaf blade of your grass off. They usually won't kill the grass. It looks like someone has gone out and mowed a section of your grass, even though it's the caterpillars actually eating the top part of your grass.
Oh, will they kill your grass?
Usually not, no.
Okay.
And they're very easy to contain. Is if you find them and we get out there to spray them for you, usually it's within a couple of hours they're dead.
What about army worms?
Basically the same thing. They can do a little bit more damage than what sod webworms, but basically they're almost the same.
Okay, and then the last pest that I've seen here recently more and more is grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers, they can defoliate certain bushes if they're a soft tender plant type bush. Lilies are something that they really love to get a hold of, but it's very difficult to kill them. That's the problem with them is you can spray them directly with a really strong oil base, and if they're full-blown adults, it's almost impossible to kill them.
Isn't some of the problem you're having today with treating, especially I know you treat also shrubs and plants and trees and stuff. Isn't some of the problem you're limited in what you use because of the bee situation?
Yeah, they've, over the last probably 7 to 10 years, they've cut a lot of these chemicals that we use in half or eliminated them altogether. So we don't have a big selection of products like we used to, which, bees are probably one of the most beneficial things that we have here.
Yeah.
And even if you find a bee nest on your property, you don't want to kill it if you don't have to. You can call, a local beekeeper and they'll come out and remove the bees, usually for free. But bees are something that, we keep an eye on them very close. If there's a lot of bees in shrubs, we generally will not spray an insecticide on them.
Coming into this spring, what do you think is going to be the biggest pest problem we have in the local area?
Well, springtime, as soon as it starts to warm up, you can have mole crickets or chinch bugs, either one. Those are the two big ones.
And then I guess this, like emerging markets, emerging pests, a lot of concern last year with mosquitoes, especially Zika mosquitoes and stuff like that. And a lot of people are getting a little paranoid about having mosquitoes around the house. I'm going to ask you a question I've never asked you. Do you guys treat for mosquitoes?
No, generally we don't. I had a customer that I was at his house getting ready to spray his yard, and he had a company out of Orlando before a birthday party came out and sprayed his yard just for mosquitoes so he could have his birthday party. And when he told me what they had sprayed, it was probably 25 to 45% less potent than what we spray, and they charged him an arm and a leg to spray his backyard, and he said it actually did nothing for mosquitoes. So, getting rid of mosquitoes is, almost impossible in Florida.
Because I do know at dusk time, I don't care where you're at in Lake and Sumter County,
Yep.
At dusk time, they pull the hypodermic needles out.
Oh, you betcha.
They're coming to get you.
Yeah, and so when you hear a lot of these companies that say that they can come out and spray for mosquitoes, it's almost impossible. You're wasting your money.
Okay. Let's sort of shift around. We got a few minutes left. We want to talk about fertilizers. Mm-hmm. I take it there's a lot of people use these granular bags of fertilizers they get from the big box stores, and you say, what about these fertilizers?
Well, depending on what kind of a fertilizer it is, if it's a time-release fertilizer, time-release fertilizers are okay. The only problem is you have a heavy rainstorm come in, drop 2 or 3 inches of rain, and a lot of that fertilizer can be washed right down the drain and never to be used and can pollute.
The fertilizer situation, and do you use granular fertilizers or do you use spray?
We use liquid. And so once it's applied, it's absorbed into the plant in the ground. It's not going to wash off.
So you feel like it's safer for the lakes?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
All right. Thinking about the fertilizers for St. Augustine grass, what type of recommendations do you have for St. Augustine grass?
Once you hit springtime, you want a higher nitrogen, which is the first number, and a lower number, which is the last number of potash. And there's lots of different combinations.
What do you find works the best?
A 24011 is a really good fertilizer, a granular type fertilizer.
Now, I've heard people talk about they put lime on their yard to green up their yard, or they've added some some natural. How do you feel about stuff like that?
Lime really doesn't do anything for color. Lime literally takes the acid out of the ground If you have a lot of oak tree leaves are very acidic. If they lay on the ground, next thing you know, you got very acidic soil. St. Augustine and zoysia do not like acidic soils.
Chuck, you also fertilize and treat plants and bushes.
Yes.
What's the difference in the fertilizing and the pest control for plants and bushes?
Plants are a little bit different. We do use a granule fertilizer on shrubs. We do use a palm fertilizer. It's got a lot more elements than just a regular 666. And most of your landscapes already have palm trees in it. It's a very high quality fertilizer, and we put that on all of our landscapes.
I noticed a lot of these little white mites on bushes.
White flies.
Tell me about those, and how do you treat those things?
We will treat white flies with a liquid insecticide. We go and spray the bushes down. You have to be very thorough. You have to spray it down quite a bit, both on top of the leaves and underneath the leaves. And white flies, we see them here for a couple of months out of the year, not like South Florida, which is year-round. But they're usually pretty easy to take care of once you soak them down with a good insecticide. And
what will they do to your bush?
They'll just, you'll get leaves that'll turn brown. They just, kind of suck some of the juices out of the leaves. But they're usually pretty easy to control once they're located.
Well, I want to remind everyone once again, Chuck Hackenberger will be at the New Home and Remodeling Expo. It's Saturday, March the 4th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 400 West Meadows at the National Guard Armory right here in Leesburg. Chuck's seminar on how to make your lawn beautiful is at noon, and it's free. The expo is free, plus there's going to be the Great American Heroes Walk benefiting Habitat for Humanity's Veterans Village, and it's going to be a wonderful event. A lot of things going on, plus the Leesburg High School band's going to be out there. In fact, the next show we're going to talk more about the home show. And Chuck, if someone heard something today that they'd like to talk to you more about, what's a good phone number they can reach you at?
352-406-2210.
And I'd like to thank you for watching Around the House today. You can listen to Around the House every Monday from noon until 1 p.m. on my 790 WLBE. Catch Around the House on the air nightly on LSTV. And be sure to catch Around the House, the column, Wednesdays in the South Lake Press and Saturdays in the Daily Commercial. Until next time, we will see you around the house.